Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, Kraken are back at it. They've won a game.
They've won a game, which is huge. We could not say that last week, that since we had recorded, they won another game. And a huge win it was, too, over Vegas at home. First time beating Vegas in Climate Pledge Arena. A win that the team definitely needed.
Yeah, and it come back from a 2-goal deficit, come back from being down 5-on-3 early, all that kind of stuff. It showed the resiliency that this team had earlier in the season and maybe wasn't always there on the road trip, but it was good to see them have that and get that win at home. It is weird, RJ, that this team seems to be pretty good at home this year. Is this still the Kraken? Are we sure?
You know, different team, different coaching staff, a few different players, not too many, but still, I think everyone will take the improvement on home ice, and we've certainly seen that so far this year.
Definitely. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the big trade that they made this week. We'll talk about the skills showcase. But first, RJ, why don't you tell the people all about our wonderful sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall?
Right. So it is November. And we last week already said, look, new month, they got the new burger of the month, the jalapeno popper smash, but that's kind of old news. But if you want one of those burgers, I always think the best way to enjoy Queen Anne Beer Hall is to go there and experience the atmosphere and the crowds and everything right for a game. But let's say you are craving that jalapeno popper smash or one of their famous pretzels, right? But you can't make it all the way out to the beer hall. We understand, you can't always go, right?
Yeah.
But you can get it delivered. And because it's November, it is no fee November. So no delivery fees on any orders over $20 at Queen Anne Beer Hall. So for the whole month of November, that's the promotion they're running. So if you do want to get it delivered, if you want to enjoy that pretzel or that burger or any of the other food that they have from the comfort of your own home, go to their website, queenannebeerhall.com. There's a big banner at the top with that'll let you deliver and get delivery from them. So it's another fun option that you have. I don't think we've talked about that before.
I don't think we have either, and that's pretty impressive because we've talked about that place a lot. So it is good, and this would definitely be the time to check it out for sure. That is good stuff. And then also, real quick before we dive into the podcast, just wanted to let people know that our Patreon schedule is up for this month. For all the wonderful stuff that we do over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey. And that includes our upcoming chats here, RJ. I got my prospect chat upcoming on the 18th at 7 p.m. and your Armchair GM stream the following night.
Right. We're going back-to-back nights with that. We got the prospect chat and then the Armchair GM stream. And then 4 days later, we've got the ECH live commentary game as well for the Kraken at LA Kings. That'll be a 1 p.m. start. So we know that's going to be a good friendly time for, we know we have a lot of European listeners, a lot of listeners on the East Coast. And so it'll be a more friendly time for them. And so we hope you all get to tune into that. But also I do like when it's kind of bunched together like that too, where we've got it all within a week stretch, because as we've mentioned before, you can try it out for free. We have a free 7-day free trial of the Patreon. You can try it out, see if you like it. And if you time it right this month, you can check out all 3 of our main offerings, right? The prospect chat, the Armchair GM stream, and the live commentary game. You can join us for all of those for free, just to check it out, see if you like it, and you get a good idea of what it is that we do on the Patreon.
Yeah, we always, when we do promote that and when we do have stuff bunched up like that, we get a lot of people trying it, and a decent amount of them end up staying on and everything, and they get to join that community and be a part of it. And I also like when they're all bunched together, because then like kind of the running jokes or topics can kind of bleed over from chat to stream and all that kind of stuff. And it always makes it really feel like that kind of close-knit community that we're doing it all with. So I like that aspect of it and looking forward to doing all that stuff. I know there's lots of talk on the Discord that we're due for another prospect ranking. I don't think I'll get to that this November because I'm just trying to get all the CHL guys still before I would do that. But I'm excited to talk about the game in Brampton on this prospect chat, talk about some of the CHL Kraken prospects that are there. And then it looks like for December, we'll be doing another big ranking of all the prospects. So
maybe a little holiday gift for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. It sounds good. All right, RJ, on to this last week in Seattle Kraken hockey. And we can't start anywhere but the Super Skill Showcase because I finally got to attend one. It was wonderful. It was a great event. For the stuff on the ice, I know there were some issues with the season ticket holder meet and greet ahead of time. I know lots of people weren't able to make the signings that they were kind of supposed to make there. The team has said that they're going to find a way of making that right for everybody. They're just trying to figure out the best way logistically to do that. But all the on ice stuff, RJ, was fantastic. I understand now what everybody's been talking about for the last couple of years. I mean, I had a pretty good idea already about how much fun it would be, but it was a lot of fun to see it.
I'm glad it lived up to your expectations. It's always one of my favorite days of the year because just the fun events, everybody kind of just taking it light. I mean, they've got some of their kids on the ice. Cheddar, Jared McCann's dog, did make a brief appearance. That's who I wanted to see the most personally. And we got some great skills on display too. I mean, whether it was the accuracy shooting, the hardest shot, Jamie Alexiak, 101.6 miles an hour. That was really impressive. And he barely even stepped into it too.
Yeah.
That was crazy. He just makes it look so easy. And then, of course, the cool moves in the shootout. That's my favorite part, the breakaway competition. And you had the e-bugs in net. I thought they did a pretty good job.
They did.
But man, some of those moves, like the Shane Wright, I don't know what you call that, the Michigan spinorama thing. I think he wasn't even sure what to call it. I just think of it as the Oliver Wahlstrom move because the 9-year-old Oliver Wahlstrom did that, back in the day. That's the first I heard of it. But no goalie stopping that.
No goalie stopping that. It was fantastic. Yeah, we were trying to figure out, like, was it like a lacrosse style move? I think so, because you're like kind of picking it up off the ground and then throwing it. That's by definition lacrosse.
Yeah, but I know that name's been used for what we would call the Michigan.
Yeah.
So
it is a tough one. It is a tough one. Somebody's just got to get on it, RJ, and really like put together.
Well, first person to pull it off in the NHL, it gets named after them. How about that?
Okay, that sounds good. I think that's
in an NHL game, which of course will not be Shane Wright.
Yeah,
because as he said afterward, he said you would never try it in a game. That Dan would kill him if he ever attempted it.
Yes. We were just talking about in a shootout too. Like, imagine a breakaway pulling that out.
That would be ridiculous.
How much does your team have to be up or down for somebody to do that, you think?
8 goal. Well, if you and it has to be. I don't know either
like
one. If you're up 8 goals, then you're just showboating, right?
Right. Yeah.
Then you're gonna get
it has
hit.
to be.
Someone's gonna come and punch you.
Yeah.
But then if you're down 8 goals and you do that, like that's
especially
if you
miss,
really bad too.
If you miss, it's like a really. that would be a tough one. You have to be prepared for the questions from the media afterwards for sure.
Yeah. I feel like it has to be tied and you have to score.
Oh, I want it to happen. Hey, with how skilled these players are coming into the NHL right now, I maybe we see it. Get on that, Macklin Celebrini. Be our hero.
Then Dylan will finally believe in you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The whole event was a lot of fun. Getting to see the players with their family, like especially warming up was really cool. Getting to see them just with that more relaxed atmosphere. Knew everything was going to be good when Maddie and Berkey step off onto the ice with the baseball caps on backwards. I was like, okay, yeah, here we are. This is what I'm here for. Yeah, this is what I'm here for. This is what it's all about. And it is interesting, like when you do get to see like the breakaway challenge, what kind of moves guys go for, and what do they feel like, and seeing Lars, the big cat, going out there making some sick moves. Like he was straight up just like, I'm showing off the skills that I have to try to pitch to this new coach that I belong in the shootout maybe. And I think he did a great job.
I agree with that. I've said in the past, I've been saying this for years, Adam Larson is part of the optimal shootout lineup for the Kraken. I've been trying to get that movement going and building a little bit. And I think Lars did a whole lot to help me out in that skills showcase, because the hands, Dylan, the last one, where it was the winning goal for the whole thing and won the skills showcase, that one he probably doesn't get away with in the NHL. He took a lot of time to get around and everything. Yeah. But his second breakaway move, just showing off the hands, he looked like Patrick Kane skating in there, trying to get a goalie to bite. And look, I knew he had that in his bag, but I feel like a lot of other people didn't. And so he showed it off there.
We really missed the opportunity to ask Dan about that after practice today. Like, because I was thinking about like, oh, should we ask about like, did he enjoy the first Super Skills Showcase, and
Yeah,
nobody asked him a single question about it. So I was like, is there like, do we not talk about this with the coach? What's going on? But now I'm thinking about it. I should have asked about Lars and him maybe joining the shootout lineup.
If I had remembered, I would have done that. Too many other things were going on today. I forgot about it. But yeah, we at some point, maybe after the next shootout or the practice after the next shootout or something, you joke about it.
Yeah, exactly. That was really neat to see him do that, because I've heard the stories, but being able to see it in the moment was certainly special. The 3-on-3 I thought was kind of fun too, especially Jordan Eberle at the end of that first period. They had recognizing how much time was left on the clock, and that if he just went, nobody was going to kind of be up on it. They were going to try to coast out the clock, and he went in and tied it up at the end of the first period. I thought that was neat. The best part about it, though, RJ, best part about it for me specifically, was that we got a coach protesting, lobbying for his squad, and it paid off big time for one Joey Decord, coach of Team Joey, and I respect the heck out of that. Especially, it's not a big deal, it's just an event for the fans, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. No, Joey was there to win, and he lobbied for his guys, RJ, and he was more successful than he even knew lobbying for his guys, as he got somehow Team Groovy to only have 5 points out of a 10-point challenge they won.
I know, that's impressive stuff. Joey was out there to win. He knows no other way. And yeah, so what happened is there was a challenge that was worth 10 points.
The breakaway challenge.
The breakaway challenge. Team Groovy won it. They gave him 15 points. And then Joey, of course, was complaining there on the mic, like, what is this? And he managed to get him lobbied down to 5 points, actually, which was less than what it was worth. So good on Joey there. Although I think he's demonstrated that he is in negotiations. He's good at getting the number to 5.
Yes, that is true. That's very,
look
very
at his last
true.
contract, 5 years, 5 million. I think that's the number that he gets when he negotiates.
That does make sense. Yes. There's a clear pattern. That's 3 things now. That's no longer coincidence. It is a pattern with Joey Decord.
There we go. That was a fun moment too, though. Although Team Groovy did end up winning the thing. They
did, and Joey not thrilled about that, obviously, but it was good. I just, you know me, I love and respect a good coach's protest. And
yes,
that is what sports is all about for Dylan. Just
that is true. Everything is played under
protesting results, and then playing the rest of it under protest. That's what I'm here for. No, it was good stuff. Going in the locker room afterwards, just how chill and relaxed everybody was. That was kind of a neat, different experience too, for it all. But yeah, it was good stuff. I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to future Super Skills showcases.
That's definitely the most laid back media scrum you've ever been a part of, right?
Oh yeah.
The players.
Like, I don't know when else it could be that laid back, to be perfectly honest.
That's true. Certainly not in the locker room, like after a game or any other time you'd be in there.
Yeah, no. And you know that just because a decent amount of them were still in the locker room when we showed up. If it's any sort of serious at all, everybody who doesn't have to be there leaves. So yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it to people to check out in future seasons if you can make it. All right, now RJ, the real big news from this week was surprising news, came out of nowhere. I think for all of us, we're not expecting this at all. But your boy, Ding Dong Daniel Sprong, is coming home.
That's right. I was so excited to see this. It happened, the news broke right before the Vegas game.
Yeah.
I was out on my way to the arena for the game and saw it on my phone that the Kraken had traded for Daniel Sprong. And yes, that is the trade. They acquired Daniel Sprong from the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for future considerations, which essentially means nothing. We did get some questions on this after the trade. So I do want to explain real quick, especially for the newer fans, that when you see a player that's traded for future considerations, that essentially means nothing is going back the other way. In the NHL, you're not allowed to trade a player for literally nothing. And so you'll have some kind of future considerations in the deal that you'll just say, okay, maybe we'll give you something in the future. I don't know if there's actually a log of what exactly that is, or it could even be a 7th round pick that's met if some condition is true that's never going to happen, but essentially it means the Kraken got Daniel Sprong for free. So I just wanted to clarify that, especially for the newer fans.
Yeah, and I'm trying to check to see, because like every once in a while you'll get somebody, like a future consideration will come back later and end up meaning something, but it's very rare.
It is. And I wouldn't expect that we see anything like that in this deal. But yeah, sometimes it happens. That is something I would like to ask. I mean, it's a shame because every time we get to talk to, a G like Ron Francis, right? There's more important things to talk about.
Mhm.
And can't just pull him aside and have a big conversation about what future considerations actually are. But the important part, if you're looking at this deal as a fan or media or anybody, is that essentially Daniel Sprong to the Kraken for nothing, going back to the Canucks the other way. And so if we can get into the actual trade and
Yes.
what it means for the team, first of all, I love this trade. And that's one of the first reason I love it is because there's no risk. They gave up nothing.
Yeah.
And Daniel Sprong, he makes less than $1 million. That's an amount that you can, if all goes wrong, right, you can bury that in the minors. It doesn't really affect your cap situation negatively unless he's good.
Mhm.
And as far as what he brings to the team, I think anyone who was watching the team a couple years ago knows exactly what he brings to the team. Of course, this is Sprong's first stint in Seattle. He was there a couple years ago, actually, and then at the tail end of year one. But he's a goal scorer.
Mhm.
He's going to score goals. That is the one thing that he does very well. Other areas like defensive play, maybe not quite as good, but he scores goals. And it's easy to forget after the convincing win against Vegas, but goal scoring is something that this team very much needs this year. I think he's going to add an element to their bottom six that they really just don't have anywhere else. He might not be in the lineup every game kind of guy. He might get rotated in and out depending on what you need in your lineup on that given night. But I love what he brings to a team's bottom six. I think he works really well in the system. I think
Mhm.
he will work well in the system because he brings that speed. He brings that transition ability. And we've seen the Kraken so many times this year. They're able to work the puck up the ice. They're able to get these odd man rushes. They're able to get chances, but they don't have a lot of finishers on this team. Daniel Sprong is a finisher. He is a pure finisher. And I think that's going to bode very well for him, especially in Dan Bilesma's system.
Yeah, that is the one thing. As I was thinking about it too, I was like, okay, because I wasn't as big a fan as a lot of people were of Daniel Sprong back in season 2 when that fourth line was doing all the stuff that it was doing. I do think that yes, the speed and then transition stuff should work in the system a lot better than it did year 2 under Coach Dave Haxall, because there was a lot of those situations where Daniel Sprong was kind of creating those chances on his own, and he was kind of bucking the system to do so. And now he won't be. That'll just be what the system actually is. And defensemen, if he wants to cheat up a little, defensemen are going to be looking for that, right? Like that is what this system wants to do. They want to have those nice, strong breakouts. They want to try to go and get a controlled zone entry if you can, and then hopefully get a chance off the rush. That is the way that he played season 2 with the Kraken. That's the way it's the only way he really plays. And so it should be a better fit here. I understood the idea of that being the case with him in Vancouver and why he would choose Vancouver and why Vancouver chose him. I think Rick Tockett's system there is still very much about speed and about those entries and attacking off the rush, but it's a lot more kind of planned out in the movements that players take coming in off the rush, depending on how many players there are, all of that kind of stuff, where Dan's system allows for more creativity from the players than what you'd see under Rick Tocchet. And I think that that's something that Daniel Sprong needs. Is he needs a system that allows him the freedom to kind of just, as he's seeing a defender take a certain lane, he's going to go and make a move to do something different. And I think he should get that here. And I think that's partly why he should probably work out better here than he was earlier this season in Vancouver.
Right. And the kind of player that Sprong is, right? He's not a fit for every team and every situation. It's the kind of thing too, where if he's not somebody the coach is sold on night in, night out, which I honestly think was the case during his last stint in Seattle with Hackstall. I think Hackstall probably had other options he might have preferred to play.
Yeah.
Then it can be a bad situation like that. But I'm hoping it'll be different here with Dan as the coach, and I think with a better system fit. And I know that's an area that our friend Darren Brown at Sound of Hockey was asking about and was very curious about. He asked Dan about it after the Vegas game, right? About, why do you think he's kind of, or no, he asked Ron about it, I think, before the game. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that he's, had so many different destinations and gone so many places, right? And I think the answer is probably clear enough, right? The deficiencies in certain area of his game, but I'm such a strong believer that what he does bring, if you put him in the right spots, more than makes up for the deficiencies in his game.
Yeah, I mean it is a tough one, right? Because this is always the question with Daniel Sprong, and I will point out that we essentially just got him for nothing for the second time.
It does say something about his value, and I will say too, when the Kraken got him the first time around in a deadline day deal with the Capitals, I asked Ron about, okay, what did you see in Daniel Sprong that made you want to include him as part of this trade to get him? And his answer was essentially, well, that's Daniel, somebody that Washington wanted to include in the trade back to us. Basically, they wanted to give him to us.
Yes.
So I think that does still say something about his value and kind of how he's thought of around the league. But I'm more of a believer than even these other people who are smarter than me and in these positions where they get to make the decisions. I don't know. Maybe there's something they see that I don't.
Look, it's not just you, right? Like he does create fans everywhere he goes. People fall in love with
Jeff
his
Merrick,
ability.
most notably.
Yes, Jeff Merrick most notably. He does create, he scores goals. He plays the game well in that sense, and he does kind of create a following wherever he has gone. So there is something to that. It's just, yes, I think as far as impact a player can make, I have a hard time believing somebody can become an impact player for a team when he's constantly bouncing around on like league minimum deals and he's getting traded for nothing. Like it's kind of hard to then be like, yeah, that's going to be an impact player for this group. It does work for this team specifically because of the system fit, because of just how much they struggle to score. Right. I mean, last week's episode of this podcast was called The Search for Offense. Daniel Sprong fits that. Right? Like he would be one of the things you would find on your search for offense would be Daniel Sprong. And it does sound like, kind of reading between the lines of Ron's answers, that Ron probably brought this up in conversations with Vancouver, the idea of bringing him in. And, Vancouver, like I had said already, not a great fit in Rick Tockett's system. They also had guys like Jonathan Lekiamaki at the AHL level just lighting it up, and they were going to want a spot open for him to bring him up from Abbotsford, and this helps them do that. So it wasn't just like, they had reasons to move on and open up a spot there at the NHL level. So we'll see. I mean, I'm looking at like his 82 game average at the NHL level, and it is a 20 goal scorer. It's a 20 goal scorer, 38 points. I mean, that's not bad. He has played exactly 82 games with the Seattle Kraken before. Obviously, different system. But in those 82 games with the Kraken, RJ, 27 goals, 52 points. I mean, wild. If you were to put him on the roster
in under 12 minutes of ice time a game.
Yes, 11:52 average ice time in those 82 games with the Seattle Kraken. Averages for his career 11:56. Which is, again, another reason, like, if he's a great impact player, probably would be playing more than that. But if you were to tell me, RJ, that Shane Wright this season was going to play 82 games, have 27 goals, 52 points, I'd be like, wow, Shane showed up. That's great. That's the secondary offense this team needed. Maybe Daniel Sprong does that, and he does help them lift them over the edge when they get into these kind of close 1-goal game situations.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying is just that you take that kind of production with that kind of minutes on fourth line minutes. If you can get that kind of production, I don't care how bad he is defensively. If he's going to get somewhere in the range of 25 goals for you in under 12 minutes of ice time a night, I feel like you have to be pretty darn bad defensively to make that proposition not worth it. So that's all I'm saying on Daniel Sprong. And look, he's not going to solve all this team's problems. I will repeat that, right? They have other issues. He's not going to solve everything for sure. And when I say that I'm really excited about this trade, because I'm very excited about it. A lot of it also is because my job just got a lot more fun because I get to see him in the locker room like most every day, right? And he was one of the most fun players to talk to when he was here a couple of years ago. And so he'll always give you good quotes. He'll always be candid about how things are going. And so I really appreciate that part of it as well. He's fun to work with, in a media sense.
Yeah, it is interesting. I do feel like from that big fourth line that you had season 2, right, where it was Morgan Geekie with Daniel Sprong and Ryan Donato. I do think that he's the best fit for this current group and this current squad of those guys. Maybe not Ryan Donato. Ryan Donato is actually
really over Donato. Yeah.
Okay, system fit wise, right? Like for what we talked about, like he fits the overall idea of all the stuff that Dan was preaching. Ryan Donato would absolutely add the most to this team because he'd be a net front presence. He would be a grinder. He'd be exactly who like Shane Wright right now needs to be playing with. But from that like macro viewpoint of just the basic concepts, Daniel Sprong fits the bill. I am hopeful for it. I'm not gonna be rooting against him or anything. I am hopeful that he's able to come in and kind of be a 20 goal guy, right? Score 15 to 18 goals the rest of the season, something like that. I do think though that we need to talk about, well, first off, when he joins the team, which we got again repeated today, they're in the process of the immigration paperwork. End of week is the hopeful timeline that the team and the organization has right now for when Daniel Sprong can join them. Probably won't see the lineup right away in that time either, just because he's going to have to kind of learn everything. Once he gets into the lineup, though, RJ, how do you think he is going to be used?
I think it'll probably be in a similar role lineup wise to where we saw him a couple years ago, as far as maybe a more speed and skill element to a fourth line. I think that's the primary place that he would be used. And it would be, maybe instead of a Ty Karche or something where you have a Gord Tanev and then a Sprong. And it does change the identity of that line a little bit, but that's where I would guess you would put him right away. I could also see him potentially, if the team does struggle a little bit more and you want to send a message. Look, they've already healthy scratched Oliver Bjorkstrand for one game. If you do have a player healthy scratch, I doubt it would be Bjorkstrand again, but maybe like a Burakovsky or, a Tolvanen or somebody like that. I think you could put Sprong in that spot in the lineup, and I think he would perform fine, for a limited amount of games. But I primarily see him, I think, somewhere in a bottom 6 role, playing those kind of fourth line minutes and just trying to provide a little more offense. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I am worried for Ty Karche here. Like, because it does feel like Sprong is going to bring kind of what they're hoping Ty brings. And I think Ty brings energy and speed and that kind of stuff, but he does it more in like a forechecking capacity. Whereas, yeah, with this team and the offensive issues that they kind of have collectively as a group, somebody bringing that speed, but then with a more offensive mindset and the ability to finish more consistently than probably Ty can, I would understand why that would be attractive to the coaching staff and why that would be something that they would want to start including a little bit more on that fourth line. And hey, if you're going to have, defensive deficiencies, if you're going to have maybe not be a strong guy in on the forecheck, being on a line with Yanni Gord, who can certainly cover defensively, and being on a line with Brandon Tanev, who can certainly go in on a forecheck and do the work that needs to get done there. That's as good as you can probably shelter him anyway in this lineup, just realistically speaking. So I really think that the person who should be most worried, so to speak, in this situation is Ty Karche.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And thinking about that, a Gord Tanev Sprong line too, it does have a little bit of everything that you want. It's got 4 checkers. It has tons and tons of speed. And then it has even, guys with some defensive responsibility too. Yanni Gord, especially if he wants to step up and take that role. That looks like a good line to me.
Yeah, and Tanev knows what he's doing back there. There's a reason he's on the PK. So, you'd be making up for the gaps that Daniel Sprong kind of has. You would have guys on the roster that could kind of, and on the line that would kind of help out with some of those. And so we'll see if that's what ends up happening. That's kind of from the lineup perspective. Oh, the other thing, do you think we see him on the power play?
I would think so. Because look, this team doesn't have a ton of options on the they're not deep enough to go through 2 units of forwards,
They
8
don't,
forwards,
yeah.
right?
I mean, they sort of have, they do have, I would argue they do have depth. What they don't have is players with a shoot first mentality. They don't have enough of those.
Yes, that kind of depth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about players who work well for the power play, I don't think they have that kind of depth. And Sprong, absolutely. He's got more scoring and finishing chops than their 8th best forward for sure.
Yeah.
And he's somebody too who can play, because he's right-handed. He can kind of be a one-timer option on the left side, which is something the Kraken really just don't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm
like
going,
who else can do that?
on the what?
Look at the team's right-handers. That's saying on the
Yeah.
left side. You look at the team's right-handed forwards, who they have that
yeah.
could be a one-timer option. You've got Eberle, who can't really do it. You've got Bjorkstrand, who can't really do it. Like the one-timer just isn't
Yeah.
part of their
Yeah.
repertoire, right? And that's it.
I mean, Shane,
but the one-timer isn't really part of his game.
well,
Like not
I've seen
from
him do
that
it
spot.
I've seen him do it in CV, but not at the NHL level. It hasn't been a part of it. I am looking at his power play production, because he was part of the power play group that back in year 2. He did have 6 of his 21 goals were on the power play that year. So he was pretty efficient there on the power play for that group. Let me actually see, because do you think that led the team in power play goals that year? It was.
I was looking at McCann had
second to
7. He had one more.
Yeah. Close though, pretty close.
So it shows he can get it done on the power play though, and that's just another area where he adds. And and certainly given the deficiencies in his game on the power play, you shouldn't have to worry about that.
No, you don't have to worry about it. And again, I'm going to check to see where the power play for this year is as a whole, but it would not surprise me if it's 20th in the league right now at 17.39. I got to imagine Coach Bob Woods and Coach Jess Campbell are looking at Daniel Sprong and what he can do on the power play and being like, yeah, I think we could find some room for him. And if he's going to be in the lineup, we'd like him on that unit, please.
Yep. Room for improvement there for sure.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. We've talked about it now from the lineup perspective though, RJ. What does this mean in a larger capacity for the team as far as the cap situation? Because right now it's all great because we still have Vince Dunn on LTIR, and the latest on him from Ron Francis the other night, speaking on the Kraken Hockey Network, was that looks like still 3 weeks out on Vince Dunn. So he's not going to return when he's first eligible to, which I believe was tomorrow. Not ready to go, still not skating in any way that we've seen yet. Sounds like closer to the end of the month then for Vince Dunn. So you're going to have that cap space from having him on IR there, RJ. But once he comes off, you're back dealing with the situation of, do you have to go with the 20-man roster, all that kind of stuff? What do you think happens, and how does Daniel Sprong affect that?
Well, Daniel Sprong definitely does affect that because he's making more than league minimum. He's making $975,000 against the cap this year. And so that does throw a wrench in some things once Vince Dunn returns. So once you get Dunn back, you're out of LTIR. And if you have the same, what it would be a 22-man roster at that point, where you have Vince Dunn joining the roster and Sprong still up, all of a sudden you are over the cap by about 970,000. And so basically almost Sprong's amount. Remember, we talked about the Kraken having about $4,000 in cap space to work with to start the season. You bring in a guy who's at 975, now you're 970 over roughly. And so at that point, the easiest thing to do at that point is, if Daniel Sprong, if he isn't bringing what you wanted or whatever, and this is where the risk-free element comes in, you can send him down to Coachella Valley and you can bury that contract, and you're right back where you were with the 21-man roster, the $4,000 in cap space, the situation they started the season with before the Vince Dunn injury. That's one way they could go. Another way they could go, if they want to keep Daniel Sprong on the roster, then it gets a little trickier. And you're talking about a 20-man roster instead of a 21-man roster. And so that means, first of all, sending down a Josh Mahura, and that'll get you a little closer to the cap, but you'll just have the 6 defensemen on the roster. And that's still not enough cap space. You're going to have to send one more player down if you want to try and keep everybody on your team. So it could be, I mean, really the only one here that would make sense to just send down would be a Ty Karche, although I would think he might get claimed off waivers because he would require waivers. But if you're dead set on keep, let's say Sprong comes into the lineup, does fantastic. He's scoring all over the place. Ty Karche has been a healthy scratch. One thing you could do is waive Ty Karche, send him down to the Firebirds, and you are back under the cap. Still, that does not give you a ton of flexibility.
Mm-mm.
And going with and still you'd have to go with a 20-man roster. That means no extras. You cannot afford a single injury that is not a long-term injury. And so all it takes is one injury for that whole plan to be blown up. I think the cleaner solution, certainly, probably the better solution, the solution that I've been talking about since the start of the season, is going to be necessary at some point, is you have to make a trade. You have to move out one of these bigger contracts. It's going to happen eventually. The Vince Dunn injury prolonged the timeline that it's going to be necessary. But at a certain point, as Ron Francis said, because I did ask him what his read on the cap situation was once Dunn comes back. And at that point, I didn't realize that it was a 3-week timeline for Dunn because he hadn't said anything to that effect. But he said, here's his quote: "We've got some time here before Vince comes back, unfortunately." And that's, I'll pause the quote to say that's kind of what clued us in that maybe that was the case. Yeah. Continuing, he said, "We have some decisions we're going to have to make once he's ready to come off the LTI for sure." So he's not going to tip his hat on what the decisions are, but they're going to have to make a decision about one of these bigger contract players that's going to have to move. And whether that is, I mean, now there's more names that are possible for it than I would have thought beforehand, right? Before we were saying Tanner Vergord, or maybe Tolvanen. But now I think, depending on what happens with Oliver Bjorkstrand, he could potentially be in the mix. I don't think Andre Burakovsky is movable, but if he was, he could be in the mix. But yeah, you have to move one of those guys.
Yeah, as much as I want to just say, RJ, they're just going to find a way to do it and get it done without ever having to make the move, just to spite you. Ron is just
they could have another long-term injury.
Yeah.
If another player gets injured long-term, then that just moves the clock back.
Yeah. The big thing I'm worried about is, yes, that Ty Karche becomes the person that you waive, because looking at this roster, you have two players that you could send down without requiring waivers on this roster right now, and that's Shane Wright and Riker Evans. And it doesn't really make sense to move those guys. I think, I know I had kind of loosely flirted with the idea of sending Shane Wright down just to put him in a top 6 role, try to get him into a more offensive mindset than what he's been playing with at the NHL level. I know that wouldn't be a popular opinion, and you got to worry about confidence and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, do you think it's at all possible, if he really hasn't picked up production wise, come 3 weeks from now, if he's sitting on, he's got 2 points still right now, if he's sitting on 3 points or something come the end of the month, do you think that just to make this work, they would be like, well, this way we don't have to lose anybody on waivers and Shane just kind of needs to get going? They would consider that?
No chance. I don't think there's any way they'd really do that. And even if you do it, what happens to the NHL roster, right? All of a sudden you got 3 centers. You could move Ty Karche to center and have him with Tanev and Sprong. That would be the move. But that still means you have to go with a 20-man roster because Shane's still not making that much. You'd have to move Mahura down. And are you really prepared to go into a road trip with a 20-man roster and only 3 real centers?
No.
It's
the answer for me is no,
although
they did do that once this season already. So
they did, but they at least had 4 real centers on the roster.
That's true. That's true. And I knew that was the one thing that I was most thinking about. I mean, you could always make Jared McCann a center for a little while if you wanted to, or something like that. Is Mahura's gonna need waivers again, right?
I don't know that he's been, because he was waived.
That's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
By the time Dunn comes back, I'm pretty sure the 30 days would have been
up. Already. That's what it feels like anyway. So you have to worry about that, and especially we've seen how good he's been in this last little bit here for the team. Gosh,
I've tried playing around with all the different ways.
I know you have. It is a tough situation. Oh, it's all the
Yeah.
up and down
it
from
might,
Kale Fleury burying everything else in the transaction report.
yeah.
He was
No,
waived
I mean
October
it.
5th. So
Okay,
remember,
but and that was before the season started, though.
yeah,
So it would be once the season
once
starts,
the
because that
season's,
remember
yeah.
we
So
talked about
then,
it, the clock.
yeah. Um, okay. So is there anything else with Daniel Sprong signing? It feels like we've covered just about every aspect of what it could
No,
be.
I think we've got pretty much every angle of the Sprong trade. I mean, the one that we haven't, and I think it might be somewhat of a segue into just talking about the general state of the team,
Yeah.
but the message that it sends to the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think one storyline this week is that some messages were sent, whether it was the healthy scratch of Oliver Bjorkstrand or the Sprong trade, or with the team not doing well, management sent some messages. And you look at that Vegas game, and at least I think through one game, you could say message received.
Yeah. No, it's for sure. And I talked about that on that last post game, I think before you joined us, which was if you're the organization and you're looking at that road trip and how awful it was, Montreal game aside, it you needed to do something and your options were a little limited without really making serious changes, which you might not want to do while you're still within that like first 20 game window that you'd kind of given yourself for everybody getting used to things. And the two options you have without like blowing up the team, right? Without making significant moves is you can add in somebody like a Sprong and make a trade like that where it's going to be for a bottom six guy, maybe has a little bit more upside, but really it's just sending the message of, look, if you guys aren't going to get going, we will go out and find somebody who will. And it's the message that Dan sent, which is if I don't feel like you're playing up to the standards I have for you, I will sit you down and I will send a message and I will do that. You just won't be playing. And those are the two messages that were sent this week. And I feel like, yes, they were both received. They were heard. We talked about with the Oliver Bjorkstrand scratching that it was one meant for Bjorkstrand because Dan felt like he could get a little bit more out of him, but also just to send a message to some other vets on the team that like, look, it's if I'm gonna pull people out of the lineup, you aren't safe either, right? I will do it for somebody who is, normally going to be seen as an everyday, pretty locked in and safe guy. And this is something that, I know a lot of fans talked about it. We talked about it late last season. Wasn't really Dave Hackstall's way of doing things, but it does, it sends the message that, hey, there's going to be accountability. When you play that bad over 4 games or 3 games at that point when they were sat for that Avalanche game, when you play that bad for 3 straight games, you're going to be held accountable. Like that's unacceptable and we just can't do it. And I think that's been refreshing to see is that the organization seems to be taking that a little bit more seriously than they kind of did last year.
And I think that's why it's a message that needed to be sent to this group in particular, because Dave Hackstall did not ever send that message in his time as the coach. You knew if you were a regular player, you were safe, that you were never going to be scratched or held accountable no matter how bad the team played. And that's why I think it's important to send that message early this season. And I'm glad that the team kind of took it well. I think they responded very well to it, not just Oliver Bjorkstrand, who comes out and scores a goal that, scores a goal the next game that is, as Dan said, probably should have been the game winner. If not for that empty net, goal from Vegas, it should have been the game winner. But the whole rest of the team, and I think the Sprong trade too, sent every bit as much of a message, because you look at the guys who I think responded the most to the Daniel Sprong trade. Maybe there's not that direct one-to-one causal relationship, but I think there's something to do with it.
Yeah.
The so-called fourth line of Gord, Tanev, and Cartier, right? They had, I think, their best game of the whole season last game against Vegas, and they looked like 3 guys who really did not want to come out of the lineup for Daniel Sprong.
No, they didn't. And I mean, it certainly felt like Tanev's best game of the year. I know obviously he picks up 2 goals, but looking beyond just the goal scoring from him, I mean, he really was playing with some energy in that one, and he was ready to go. I feel like it even had an effect. Like that was the most I had noticed Eli Tolvanen in a while, even beyond the fourth line, right? Like I do think that it was very much a message received in the sense that yeah, okay, maybe I'll get scratched again. Like if you're worried about the message of the scratchings not being enough of like, okay, I'll get scratched one game, maybe like whatever, I'll be back in the lineup, I'll pick it up, whatever. No, having somebody join the team that you know can score, you know what he can do, and a lot of these guys on the team do because they were around, a year and a half ago when he was there. You start all of a sudden going, oh, well, that's a lot harder to overcome. That's not just like, I start putting in a little bit more extra effort and I'm fine. It becomes like, oh no, I have to straight up outplay this guy like consistently. Otherwise, I just will not be playing. And I think that in some ways is a much larger message. It's a bigger and more serious message for these guys. And yeah, so far so good on the returns on that. We'll see, because I still have like my overall concerns with a large part of this team, RJ, which is just that, look, a guy like Brandon Tanev, as much as he can pop off and score 2 goals in a game, he's not going to do that with any sort of frequency, right? Like that's
No,
not
he doubled his
who
goal
he
scoring
is.
output for the season in that one game. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's not going to be who he is. I worry about Ellie Tolvanen being that person, right? I worry about some of these guys, Ty Cartier, right? Like I just talked about, that is really not Ty Cartier. He's great at doing a lot of things, but he's not a goal scorer. He's not a finisher in that sense. And so I do think that yeah, the specific targeted of like, this guy can do this one thing for us and we genuinely feel like we need it, is going to send that message to guys. But I'm still worried about the group as a whole, because even if Sprong comes in, best case scenario, scores 20 goals the rest of the season, isn't enough with the rest of these guys if they don't also pick it up and start kind of performing to the upper levels of what their ability is.
Right. And this has been a discussion that we've had over the last couple of weeks of, is this team mid? Are they worse than mid? How much are they actually producing offensively? And the answer is been not much. The Vegas game was great, and they were getting some contributions from especially that line with Gord, Tanev, and Cartier. But like you said, you can't count on that kind of production from that line every night. And so other guys do need to step it up. That's another reason I like the Sprong trade for the message it sends too, because it's not just you better play better or else you could be out of the lineup. It's, maybe you got to produce a little bit or think a little bit more offensively or else you could be out of the lineup. Because I remember a couple of years ago when Sprong was there, and they did have guys, I think it was like Donato, Geeky, Sprong. One of those guys had to be scratched every game. And those are some very good players that had to be scratched. And you knew that you were out of the lineup. If you were the scratch that night, there was a decent chance Daniel Sprong might score a goal. Like he was scoring a lot of games, right? He had those runs where if he scored a goal, how do you take him out of the lineup? And I feel like it's going to be that sort of thing again this year. And really this season was the first time the Kraken have ever not had that kind of situation. I feel like they've always had an extra forward who's somebody who can play NHL games and is not just an AHL, NHL tweener, somebody pushing the rest of those guys. I know Ron Francis likes to have that competition, and due to cap constraints this year, they really haven't been able to have that. And I think that's something they've just generally been missing. And I think it maybe did lead to the guys getting a bit too complacent.
Yeah, I enjoy, but I am a believer in that kind of competition on a team. And I do think that when you're talking about professional athletes who have risen to the highest level in their sport, that is a healthy thing. And it is something that leads to getting the most out of your guys and your team when you can create that environment and create those situations. And I think that is why I'm a big fan, probably more so than even whatever Sprong's going to bring on the ice, is just because of the overall message of it and the fact that it does create that competition that, as you said, it has kind of been lacking. And yeah, I just sorted the team by goals. Brandon Montour's tied for third on this team in goals, right? Like you could have some other forwards step it up here and start scoring, especially when Brandon Montour got 3 of his 4 goals in one game. Right.
Yeah.
So there is that opportunity there. I had something else. Oh my gosh, what was it? Because I was just thinking, overall, like, we're talking about the win from Vegas, and obviously it was much needed, and it was a good win, and it showed the resiliency. It showed their ability to finish. You got a guy like Oliver Bjorkstrand. You mentioned his goal, but the big thing for me was that's a goal he scores because he's driving the net. Like, when was the last time we saw Oliver Bjorkstrand drive the net like that? That's not generally the type of player he is. But coming off of being a healthy scratch, all of a sudden he's driving the net and he's going to that area of the ice and he gets rewarded for it. So I think that that's a positive. But you look in, and as positive as many of these aspects of this game was, RJ, there's still a part of me that is like, look, after that road trip, and I know it's a road trip and maybe the team is just normal now where they're going to be good at home and they're going to struggle on road trips because that's what most teams do. Where I look at it and I go, okay, you guys can do it. You still have it. I need to see it again though. Like, I need to see it more consistently. And whereas before I wouldn't have said this, I still feel like I need to see it consistently against like the other mid teams, because you just played two very mid teams in Ottawa and Boston, and you dropped the ball as far as you could possibly drop it. And one good game against Vegas, where Vegas is absolutely riding a high, and we were kind of talking beforehand about it hopefully maybe being a little bit of a trap game for Vegas. It's not enough for me to totally come around after that road trip. If those games had been closer and you just lost them, that would be one thing. But going back-to-back nights, not scoring a goal, looking as bad as they did, getting caved in the way that they did, I need to see it a little bit more. And I don't know that your upcoming schedule is going to be enough for me either, because it's a pretty easy upcoming schedule here for them.
Right. Well, that's the thing. They may not play very many mid teams, but I guess the next best thing is they play against some bad teams. And so if they can at least get it done against those teams, look, you don't need to beat every mid team, but you really need to beat the bad teams. And that's what you're getting in Columbus and Chicago coming up in these next two games this week. And so here's the thing. I'm with you, Dylan. I still need to see them take care of business, because that game against Vegas was above expectations, right? That's not the game that you're necessarily expected to win. They got it done. But I want to see again that they can take care of business against mid teams, and I think even more importantly, bad teams, because you're going to get some bad teams along the way, especially coming up, right? You've got 2 against Anaheim, 2 against San Jose late in the month. You got a couple, mid games, although Nashville really might qualify. They're the worst team in the NHL right now. Yeah, they qualify as a bad team, I'd say right now.
Yeah.
You have a lot of those teams coming up. And so you got to make sure you can take care of business against those teams. So I share your questions there. That said, and maybe it's just a vibes thing. I don't know. Maybe I was just so convinced by how they played against Vegas. I'm really confident they're going to. I think that Vegas game is the start of a 4-game win streak.
That's
the
bold.
way that it doesn't even feel bold to me. And maybe not even so much that it's what the Kraken are doing, but look at how Joey Daccord is playing.
Mm-hmm.
He has been playing absolutely lights out. They've been doing enough, at least against Vegas and even Colorado. They got 3 goals. They did manage to get 3.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be able to do enough. I think having played Boston, Colorado, Vegas, and I know not all those teams are great and they all have their flaws right now. It's been a while since we've seen a team the caliber of Columbus or Chicago. It really, since the Montreal game. And we saw how the Kraken did in that one. I think we're in for a couple more of those games coming up. So yeah, I'll say it right now. I think 4-game win streak that started with Vegas. Rangers game on Sunday, second half of back-to-back is going to be really difficult. I don't know about that, but the next 3, I still need to see it, but I feel very confident that they're going to show it to us.
Yeah, I mean, this is the chance, and we're talking about Columbus and Chicago being worse teams than them. Their standings wouldn't say that, right? Like they're right there with you in the standings. They're right there with you in terms of goals for and against, right? Like these 3 teams are very much bunched up around each other. So this is your time if you're Seattle to show that no, you are better than them. And you can be. I mean, I'm looking. They both have better special teams than the Kraken too, in both regards. So there is some stuff for the Kraken to improve on and whatever. Like this is, but you know what? That was the situation going into the Ottawa Boston games. You were in the same spot in the standings with them. You guys were all bunched up in terms of like goals for and goals against for the most part, and Kraken didn't handle that. And while I agree, you're now talking about worse teams on paper. I want to see it. I'm with you. Vibes feel way better than being on the road trip. That is for sure. I just you gotta have one of these games be not all the way that Montreal game for me, but you need to beat up on at least one of them. And I will
Yes.
say, watch out for Columbus, because Columbus has snuck up on a lot of teams this year. All their wins are always against like teams that they should not have beaten, and then they lose to all the bad teams for some reason. So if there was a team that could come in and sneak up on you if you were to take them lightly this year, it has been Columbus.
Yes. But I mean, they make you earn it. That's the thing. They've got wins against Colorado, Toronto, Edmonton. Like they will do that. They will make you earn it. But I think they've kind of settled into what their form should be of late. They've got 5 straight losses. I think we're starting to see what this team actually is. It just
Careful,
and I know
people
the
would have said
records,
that about the Kraken.
Yeah, no, I know people would have said that about the Kraken, but just I think you do have to take a step back and actually look at the roster and look at who's playing and just see the difference in quality. Like I know you could have said that about the Kraken Boston game, right? Same record, you're going into it,
Yeah.
similar teams. There's a difference. There's just a clear difference in the level of quality between a Boston Bruins or Colorado Avalanche and Columbus and Chicago. There just is.
Yeah. No,
and we're about to see it on the ice, I think.
Yeah. At the very least, like in this Columbus game, I want to see the team put up some goals, because Columbus has gotten some pretty bad goaltending so far this season. And this would be the time to do something like that. And yeah, Chicago's just not great.
Connor Bedard and friends.
Connor Bedard and friends for sure. So this is the time to show that the depth you have and the depth scoring that you can hopefully get out of them is still there, because it has felt in the last 2 weeks a little bit too much like Jared McCann and Jordan Eberle. And if they're not able to really show up strong on any given night, the team is in big trouble, regardless of the level of goaltending they get. And this is your opportunity to not have that be the case in a similar way that you were able to in that Vegas game. So looking forward to it.
And if things start slow, if no one's scoring, if the depth isn't contributing, just show a picture of Daniel Sprong up on the Twins. It'll get everyone going.
Yeah. Just have like whatever his visa status is, just have it as a package tracking bar up on the Twins, and you just roll with that. So yeah, we'll see. I'm hopeful. I want to believe. I very much don't feel like this is being conditioned from last year. It was more so just that recent road trip. But again, it was a brutal road trip. It was a deep East Coast swing, back-to-back nights, and all sorts of weird shenanigans and stuff. As far as the scheduling went, I'm very hopeful that was just like a blip, and that's that. And moving forward, they will be the team that we saw more consistently before that road trip, and off to a start of seeing it again after that Vegas game. So we shall see. Looking forward to it. Kicking off tomorrow against Columbus. Should be a good game. And that's probably it, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's the week of Kraken hockey.
We've laid down the gauntlet, and now it's time for them to answer.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah,
it's how many games until 4 games between the next podcast?
Yeah, we'll have a good idea of things, and if you can just go like 3-1 or something in that time, all of a sudden the standings looks a lot better, right? Like it's been rough right now. Like Anaheim leapfrogging you from time to time, San Jose catching up. If you can put a good solid like 6 points on the board the next week, it's going to look really, really good. And you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to be back up to, even above 500 if you're able to do that. And I think that's something that this team wants to be. And I think it's where the team should be. And then we'll also be talking about, that'll be the end of the 20 game window. And kind of where does the team stand after that? And as we talked about originally, if you could just be 500 through that window and then get better from there. So this week is maybe more important than we initially thought it would be in that sense, but also it's a good opportunity for them to get right. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to having no fees for the month of November from Queen Anne Beer Hall. If you order to have their stuff delivered, definitely just order a pretzel. Come on, order. Well,
I think this is dangerous now. You're going to get on the phone and order a pretzel right now.
Well, you got to order. I am extremely hungry. I have not eaten anything yet today. So that's not a bad idea. And you know what? I'm going to have to, RJ, get more than one pretzel to get to the $20 minimum threshold. So it's not even just order a pretzel. It's just order a couple pretzels. I get like 3 pretzels.
Tragic. Yeah.
So tragic. I'm going to have to take that hit, I guess. Oh, well, poor me.
Yeah. For all of us, the things you do for us.
Exactly. And then definitely go check out Patreon for that upcoming stuff. The prospect chat on the 18th, the Armchair GM stream on the 19th, and then the 23rd for our live game commentary against Los Angeles at 1:00. It's going to be good. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.